Today's radio KD8TTE is going to help you to make sure you're ready for the Simulated Emergency Test 2020. Here's what to expect. As we've discussed in earlier videos, the purpose of the Simulated Emergency Test is threefold. First, we want to test the capability of the system of amateur radio for providing emergency communications. Second is we want to demonstrate the viability of that system for the public, for the emergency management professionals, and others who would need to rely on that capability. And third, we want to develop experience with the operators who would actually be providing that service. So we've got a couple of unique things going on this year, obviously. We have a pandemic going on, so we're going to be running everything by video conference. That's going to be really helpful for us, making sure that we can have many sites operating, and having people at those sites will not be a matter of physically moving people, but just having them join a video conference. So each site will be virtual. Anybody in the conference is on that site. So it'll be a lot of conferences with just a couple of people when we look at the overall exercise throughout the state of Ohio and beyond. Of course, we also have variable hours. Not everybody is going to be working the same hours, and also the force strength is going to be different. Some ARES groups are very big, some are very small, and these are the conditions that we are dealing with this year. So as for what to expect, our buildup is actually going to be starting on Tuesday, the 29th of September at 8 p.m. Ohio time. That will be the 30th of September Zulu time. And that's going to give us the opportunity to have a few messages flowing through the system to help make sure that everybody is receiving messages, and for us to build up the exercise scenario. Everybody will have a common operating picture as a consequence of that, and as we get closer and closer to the SET on the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of October, everyone's going to have an idea of what's going on. The 5th and 6th have been designated as our recovery period. That won't be of particular interest to most of the amateur radio operators, but some of the traffic nets might have additional messages that are continuing to flow through them, and so we'll just make sure that we've got a couple days for those to clear. So, the scene. On September the 29th, we're going to have at 8 p.m., midnight Zulu time, the 30th, we're going to have government stations initiating contact. We're going to be using the channel 4 on 60 meters, and if you hear funny call signs there is authorization, has been granted by the FEMA Spectrum Manager to make sure that we can communicate across services, so we will have amateurs and government stations able to talk with each other during the course of this exercise. We're going to begin with some warning messages, some information about what kinds of things to expect so that emergency managers will have a chance to prepare. And then, of course, the agencies are going to be handling all of those kinds of things. The agencies are going to be managing a lot of that sort of back-end sort of thing. And when it comes down to it, when we have messages that need to be moved, we have the amateur traffic system to handle that when they're going outside of the county, going across the lines of ARES districts and so on. And the Buckeye Net is going to be handling the liaison to the statewide agencies, and that's how we're going to have messages that need to go down to the county agencies flow. This follows exactly the same pattern as the County Information Report Project that we've been running since July. So again, when we have a need for that kind of communication, the Section Emergency Coordinator will activate Buckeye Net. Buckeye Net will carry bulletins, and so the Section Emergency Coordinator will have those bulletins that via Buckeye Net will go down to the District Emergency Coordinators, who in turn will relay them to the Emergency Coordinators, who in turn relay them to the operators. Exactly the same thing that we've been doing. There's actually nothing new here. So hopefully you've been practicing and have been training up throughout the course of the summer, and you'll be ready for setting the scene, the build-up period that we have that comes before the beginning of the SET operation. The benefit that you get from that, of course, is that we have a common operating picture throughout the state. Everybody who is participating understands the kind of scenario that we're dealing with and will not be having messages that don't make sense for the scene and could interrupt the continuity of play. This also gives us the opportunity to do so over a rather extended period of time. So we're talking several days where we have the ability for the emergency coordinators at the county and the district to talk to one another, the district talking to the section, and so on. This is a little bit slower than is going to happen in reality whenever there are large-scale activations, but it does give us the opportunity to make sure that the messages have gone through, people are in touch, and so this follows the training philosophy of crawl, walk, run. All right, so the SET itself, that's going to be on the weekend, 3rd and 4th of October. The groups that have registered with the Black Swan exercise controllers will be activated. And the way that that's going to work is that the agency is going to be giving them a call just like normal. We'll talk about that in a second. Anybody who has not registered but is interested in playing, the way to make that work is you just advise your district emergency coordinator of your availability. Remember that when we're talking about emergency communications, we're talking about response to disasters, there's going to be more than just your county active. So we're going to see some activation warnings that come up. There's a need for something to happen, and there's going to be an opportunity for the agency to reach out and make sure those contacts are made. So you will be getting by email or by phone on Friday, the day before the activation actually begins, what your mission is, what's happening in your county, and you're going to know not just that there is a thing happening, but there's going to be some specific information. What kind of a scene you're going to be providing communications to, the hours of operation that are needed, how many operators we're going to need. That's something that your EC is going to have to figure out based on what the mission specification is, but that's exactly reality and the way that we end up having to support those agencies. That activation is going to be tailored to your county. The kinds of things that you have in your county, the hours that you're intending to operate, the force strength, all of those things are the reason why you register. If you're going to have people that are active over a period of, let's say, 6 hours on Saturday, 6 hours on Sunday, we're not going to have a controller call and issue a mission that calls for 12 hours of operation on both days. Similarly, if you have the force strength that allows for only 2 operators at any one time, we're not going to drop a mission on you that requires 14 operators. So this is going to help to make sure that your capability and the need that is being pushed down for you to fill are going to be realistic in terms of your ability to achieve those objectives. We're just not trying to bury anybody here. We're trying to exercise the capabilities that already exist. Again, activation will come from an agency, so that's going to be one of the Black Swan exercise controllers will be calling. The point of contact for the registered organization is going to say, all right, I'm such and such an agency. You understand we've had the situation brewing for several days, and here's what we need. Starting at this time, we need for these things to happen. It's going to fit the ARES mission profile. We're not going to be pulling anything from sources that are not already published by the ARRL. We're not going to be making up any kinds of crazy communication needs. This is going to be fundamental stuff that we have been practicing all summer, and in fact, we should have been doing for years and hopefully have been. There's a pandemic going on, so don't worry about whether you're going to have to mask up and so on. There's no real deployment. Instead of being given a street address that says, get your operators here, you're going to have an address for a video conference. So what happens then is each site where there is any kind of activity, where there is any kind of radio deployment, is actually a video conference. And so what will happen is the agency and the radio personnel from ARES are going to be in the same video conference. So it's only going to be 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people in a video conference, and it's going to be where they are talking to each other as if they are in person. So a doctor, for example, walking up to the radio operator and saying, hey, I've got to get a message to this doctor at that other hospital across the state for some sort of consultation. That's going to be exactly what you are going to have to deal with in a real emergency, and that's exactly what you're going to see in that video conference. Except instead of being face-to-face, you're talking through a video conference, and it's going to be your job to get the sender's name and contact information, the addressee, the person it's going to, their contact information, and then you got to make sure you got the message right. And of course, at that point, you're going to be responsible for moving that message. So the registration also gives us the ability to make sure that we've got the agencies active at the time that you are. So we're not going to have a situation where you say that you're going to be active from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, but we're not going to have any agency personnel there for you. So you shouldn't be sitting around for a long time waiting for agency people to show up. The registration, the fact that you've given us the hours, you've given us your force strength, gives us the ability to make sure that we match you up with other sites that are active at the same time that you are. So not only do you have actors in the same video conference at the same time, so you are working together as if you are physically on site, but the messages that are going back and forth between your site and the other site where the other doctor or the other emergency manager or whoever is going to be there, so you can have those messages flowing back and forth. Again, this is meant to be very realistic play. So we're going to have activity at all kinds of different sites. There's going to be shelters, hospitals, incident command posts in the field, emergency operations centers. Any of those can be active, and they are going to need to have communications with one another. That's what this exercise is all about. So again, recapping the way that all of these pieces work. ARES will originate messages at the scene. That is, they're talking face-to-face with the doctor, with the emergency manager, with the shelter manager, and that information gets captured. Origination means we are formatting a radio message so that it will make it to the person that you need to communicate with, and then from that point, the ARES operator has to get it to one of the traffic nets so that the traffic net is going to be able to carry it out of the county, out of the district, throughout the section, whatever that path that needs to be taken. The ARES operator doesn't need to figure all that stuff out. The ARES operator needs only to know I originate a message and then I release the message for relay. Where do I release it? That's your local emergency coordinator's job to figure that out. You might have a local net manager who's going to be able to figure that out. In the case of being in the range of an operational traffic net, for example, in ARES District 7, you would go to the Central Ohio Traffic Net to unload those messages, and then you don't need to worry about it further. The traffic operators will take care of relay from there. It ultimately makes it to another site where there is another ARES operator who is going to receive that message from an NTS operator, and that ARES operator at the receiving site, the destination site, is going to take that radio message and then present it deliver it to the doctor, the emergency manager, the shelter manager, whoever's on the other side. That person is going to look at it. They're going to deal with it, and it might require a response, and that means that there's going to be origination that happens now at that site, and there is a reply message that can go back exactly the same way. It's just going to be going in the opposite direction. So when your shift is over, you're sitting there operating, SET is a 48-hour exercise. That doesn't mean that you personally are sitting there for 48 hours. The idea is that when you're in a disaster, you don't need to have 50 operators all of the time, and then it's going to be over in a couple of hours. You probably need to have a small number of operators relieving one another so that the force is able to maintain a presence, the agency is able to maintain communication over a long period of time, but no operator needs to work inordinately long hours. So once you have finished your shift, you'll be relieved by somebody else. That is going to be another ARES operator pops up in your video conference. I'm here to relieve you. Okay, great. And then you wrap up all of your stuff, and that's going to mean all those messages that you originated, all of the messages that you delivered, need to be given back to the person at the agency. This is going to be very important because we want to make sure that we're able to capture all of the messages at the endpoints as well as the messages as they were flowing through the system of relay. Don't forget, while you are there, while you're operating, take pictures, share your experience. This is meant to be very good training that's going to help us to understand what our capabilities are, to help others to understand what our capabilities are, and to build experience, which makes us more capable. You should be having fun doing this, of course, and so take the pictures, share your experience, and let your EC know, let your other volunteers know what's going on. And we're interested in seeing those as well. So when the whole thing is done, SET is over on the end of Sunday, your emergency coordinator is going to complete a form for the ARRL. That's going to be the Form A. And then if you've got a net that has been running, your net manager is going to complete Form B. That's how we get all of the accounting taken care of for the league so that they're able to recognize what activity there has been, where the activity has been, and also how much activities, the volume of messages and so on going through. These are all important because as the league is making representations about what our capabilities for emergency communications are, we have some basis for being able to make those assertions. All right, so we're getting into the home stretch here. Hopefully you are in the final preparations in your counties. If you have any questions, you have any comments, that sort of thing, feel free to respond to the video. You can send me email, of course, KD8TTE at pm.me, and I'll do my best to get them taken care of. As we are getting close to the exercise and the build-up period kicking off in the evening on the 29th of September, I'm going to start running out of time where I'm going to have the ability to respond to messages. So this is going to be pretty close to the last opportunity, and you can expect to see one more video from me just as we get the SET underway. That should help to explain the scenario and kind of what's going on and what our final expectations are, but you should be ready to go. I hope that you enjoy the exercise. We put a lot of work into it, and there are a lot of things happening. Once this is done, the after-action report is going to be very interesting reading, I'm sure, and it's going to set some important priorities for us when we look at training and what it is that we need to do in 2021 throughout the Ohio section to make sure that amateur radio emergency service and the national traffic system and the system of independent traffic nets can support the agencies and the public that rely on them in times of emergency. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. There's going to be a lot more here even after SET. I hope you have a good one. This is KD8TTE, out.